YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with some more NFL draft grades. This one is for the NFC South. We're going through every division. After this one, all we have left is the AFC and NFC West. Once we're done with those, we're going to rank all the draft classes together. We'll find out who won the draft, in my opinion. So right before we get started with these teams, 20K is our subscriber goal. We're almost there thanks to the great support out there. You guys have been awesome. And clicking that like button, notification button in case we go live at any time would be key there. And then much appreciated if you check out our Twitter there, bottom right, and link in the description. Got some polls on there. We're constantly talking about the NFL and sports in general. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. Best pick to me was Jordan Miller. I really wasn't blown away by this pick or anything. It was just kind of their best pick. So you kind of know where I'm heading already, probably. I think he's a solid corner. I think overshadowed by Byron Murphy, obviously. Solid corner, played a good game. Good games here and there. I liked his game against Arizona State, the one that stands out the most. Worst pick was Qadree Ollison, running back from Pittsburgh. Why was it the worst pick? I thought they took him too early. I actually had an undrafted grade. Wouldn't blow me away if he was a 7th-round pick. But not only that, there was better running backs on the board. Not only that, but I don't think he was even the best Pittsburgh running back. I had a 4th-round grade on Darren Hall, undrafted grade on Qadree Ollison. Interesting. Sleeper's John Kaminsky. I think they may have taken him a little early too, but he's a small school guy, not a guy that we have a lot of access to tape on, but was pretty impressive and very impressive. You didn't really expect him to be that impressive at the combine, for his strength. He put on a show at the combine too, so that's a sleeper pick. Looking at their whole picks, or their whole draft here, Lindstrom, Lindstrom started to grow on me the last month or so. I moved him up in the early 30s on my big board. So I thought he can squeeze in the end of the first. They get him at 14. What I saw happen here was they ran out of defensive linemen. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe that was all smoke that they wanted to trade up and get them all. But, Quinn Williams off the board. And then the ones that were really looking at Christian Wilkins at Oliver off the board. Wilkins just came off the board. So then they reached a little bit for a guard. They did need offensive line. It used to be good in the past. Didn't play so hot this past year, but it's a little bit of a reach, but not crazy. Caleb McGarry, there was some talk about him going late first. I stuck with the 2nd-round grade on him. And they take him in the first, but they also trade up. Like, they just had to have him. That was a little confusing to me. Their second offensive lineman. And a guy that teams that did like him move up the board, they liked his potential at guard. They already took a guard. I think he'll play tackle for those reasons, but it's a little confusing, honestly. I was tweeting about and talking about during the draft when this happened. If I would have mocked this, what were you guys told me in the comments if I would have mocked them when I started doing trades? If I would have mocked them 2 offensive linemen, I would have got ripped. Think about that. 4th round, so they didn't pick for a while because they had to trade up and get McGarry. I don't like trading up unless you have an insane amount of picks, which they had some picks to trade. But in the 4th round, they get Kendall Sheffield. I think it's a little early for Sheffield, too. I think there was better corners. I thought 5th or 6th round for him. They'd take him early 4. He even with his speed, he's got good speed. He gets beat deep plenty of times for having that speed, so that stood out to me. Not really in a good way. And then he tore his pec at the combine. Not crazy injury there, but I just thought it was a little early. Kaminsky, I thought they took a round or even 2 early, but they did take him late 4. He does have some upside. Olsen, we talked about him. Thought I was blown away by that pick in a bad way. And then Jordan Miller around 5. I thought he was a round 6 guy, but it was late 5, so they don't get penalized for that one. I do like him. And then Marcus Green, receiver from Louisiana Monroe, in the 6th round with all those solid receivers still on the board. And I didn't have a grade on him, so that was interesting. So as you probably can tell where I'm heading, didn't want to fail anybody, but I gave him a D. I did not like this draft. I mean, they were able to build up their offensive line, so they cut Fusco. So they were able to do things like that, actually save some money while doing it, but cost them picks. And they got some young guys that could struggle right away. I do like Lindstrom. It's just a little early. Surprised me a little bit. I didn't like trading up. A lot of reaches. Really, there was no best pick, honestly. There's always a best pick, but to me, it was hard to pick one to put there. So I did not like the Falcons draft, quite honestly. But they're already a pretty complete team. They had to make sure their offensive line was ready for this season. They got to stay healthy. Needed an interior defensive lineman, I thought. They didn't go that route. Needed a corner a little earlier. They didn't really go that route. It's not always about need. I am on board for that, but interesting draft. Panthers, best pick. Christian Miller for me. The Panthers it was somewhat of a steal. Yeah, they stole him. They took him in the 4th round. I had a 2nd round grade on him, but thought he can go early 3rd. Not a lot of experience at that pass rush position, that linebacker position outside. He was a traditional off-the-ball linebacker before. He switches over, and he's, a natural. And with more time, he can develop more of that. So I thought he, with some upside, could have been early 3rd at the latest. They get him in the 4th round, and they needed pass rushers. And that was already after they took their 1st-round pick. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So I love the Christian Miller pick. It's an A++ pick. Worst pick, they got none. This is the 2nd team that I had that did not have a single reach. I got 4 total teams. The Titans were the first one. The Panthers were the second one we got to. So not a single reach according to my board, which obviously is made before the draft. So not a single reach. Pretty impressive. But is it an A+ draft? That's what we got to figure out. Are there steals? Did they fill needs? Did they get much better? A lot goes into for me giving it an A+. Sleeper pick was Jordan Scarlett. Why? Because this is a 2nd-round talent running back. But I figured, I put him around round 5 because the off-the-field issues. So they got him in the right spot. It's just he's got a lot of upside, and he's a bigger back, perfect behind McCaffrey. He had two totally different off-the-field issues, except for this past year. Got it together, but it seems like he's a troublemaker. So let's see if he's good and stays on the field. He's a good running back, I tell you that. Big, has moves, has some speed, he has vision. A lot to like about Scarlett. Just got to get his stuff together and keep it together. So that's definitely the sleeper pick because he can make an impact. But talking about their, entire draft, Brian Burns in the 1st round, I expected them to go offensive line because I thought they would, play the safe route. But I like them staying true to their board. I like them taking Brian Burns. He was number 10 on my board. They take him at 16. It's a very solid pick. They haven't had pass rushers like that there in a while. They're switching to a 3-4. So they need to find guys that fit a 3-4. There really wasn't too many true 3-4 guys. Brian Burns was one of them. There was really a shortage on him down the stretch, too. They take Greg Little in the 2nd. If you watched our videos, I knew they were interested in Greg Little, as did some of you Panthers fans out there. They met with him 4 different times, which is a lot between meetings and private workouts. It's quite a bit. You don't see that a lot. So they were interested in him. I was getting worried they were going to reach for him at pick 16. They did not. They ended up getting him in the 2nd round, and they needed offensive line. Good for them. Will Greer in the 3rd round. It's about where I thought he would go. It's a solid quarterback in case Cam is hurt still. Be very interesting to see. I'm a believer in Cam being ready to go, so don't get me wrong here, but be quite the story if Cam Newton could not go week 1 and Will Greer, the 3rd-round rookie, had to go. That'd be crazy. In round 4, Christian Miller. So we talked about there being a shortage on true 3-4 outside linebackers down the stretch. The Panthers are switching to that. They have the defensive line up front for the 3-4. That's why they're switching, and they haven't had pass rushers in a while. But they get 2 3-4 outside linebackers. Christian Miller was a steal in the 4th. Brian Burns with Miller, just wow. That's all I can say about that. Wow, that's some even year 1 pressure, but that's some future pressure right there. Could be the duo of the future in terms of 3-4 outside linebackers. Scarlett in the 5th, I like that, but that's where he should have went. Dennis Daly, they get another tackle. That's a pretty solid value pick down there in the 6th. I thought he can go possibly 5, maybe even earlier. They needed more offensive linemen. And then Terry Godwin in the 7th. I had him as 7th round. It wouldn't have been crazy if somebody took him in the 6th. He's a shifty, safe receiver to take around here. I do think they need an outside receiver. If I had to point out one flaw here, they could use an outside receiver. A lot of shifty guys at that point. I gave him an A+. No reach. They got better. Their biggest needs were pass rush and offensive line. They got 2 very solid of each play, of steals actually, of each of those positions. Yeah, there's some bad news here. There was some bad because when I did 7-round mocks, I really had to evaluate each team when doing a lot of this work here. And the Panthers were one team that had the most needs, and it was pretty shocking to me. They had glaring needs everywhere. So I'm like, this team might be in trouble, especially with the Cam Newton. I'm a big Cam Newton supporter. I'm not a Panthers fan or anything, but I've always been a Cam Newton fan, and I think he's capable of winning a Super Bowl and being an MVP again. But it was unfortunate that he was hurt on top of them having a bunch of needs. So that was the bad thing. They were not in good shape, but they filled a lot of needs here. They easily, obviously, got better. They got steals. They didn't have a reach. It's an A+ draft all day for the Panthers. And then we got the Saints next. The Saints didn't have very many picks. Best pick, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I mocked them in the 2nd round getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I didn't really have a problem with him being early third, and that wouldn't have been a steal to me. It would have been a very good pick, but they get him in the fourth. That's a very, very good pick. That's an A-plus pick all day. And as you can see, 2 teams in one division, 3 teams total in the NFL, and this is the third, or 4 teams total in the NFL. This is the third team we got to that for their worst pick, they have none for me because there isn't a single reach looking at my board and looking at their draft. Not a single reach. Very impressive. I guess a little easier to do when you only have 5 picks, but still pretty impressive. There's a more impressive thing coming I'll talk about while them having 5 picks. But their sleeper pick was Alize Mack for sure. You could argue this was their best pick too. I had a 4th round grade on him. One of the better complete tight ends. Teams are looking for speed most of the time, or can he block? This guy can do everything. He's a red zone threat. 7th round pick. This is a Saints type of tight end too. It's unfortunate Drew Brees won't be along, for much longer because they would work well together. Well, they can this year. So that's a sleeper pick. Great pick. So the most impressive thing about having 5, what they did with 5 picks here is they got some players. They got maybe a better draft than some of the other teams. Talking about the Falcons, had more picks. They how did they get better impact players right away impact players with 5 picks? But breaking down the whole draft, 2nd round, Eric McCoy, it's about where he should have went. They pick up Easton in the offseason, the plans to play him at center. I did not agree with that. I think he's a solid guard coming off an injury. I don't think he's a good center coming off the injury. The Vikings had to move him from center to guard because of the struggles at center, and they paid him quite a bit of money, but it's okay. They got McCoy. The Easton, it hurts some of those Saints fans a little more because did we need to get that guy? I mean, better safe than sorry. But McCoy could also be a guard. Andrews Pete, still young, could be solid. He struggled a little bit. McCoy is very solid. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, we talked about him being a steal. They're going to use him in the slot. That's where he played most at Florida. So some people wondering why they got 2 safeties maybe. They got Saquon Hampton in the 6th. And they're both, I think Hampton can be more of a free safety. Gardner-Johnson listed as free safety, but he'll play in the slot. He's more of a corner than he is safety to me. So they get 2 playmakers there for their defense. Saquon Hampton I thought would go 5th or 6th. They get him early 6th. Alize Mack, like I talked about, I thought was a 4th. Wouldn't have been surprised he went 5th. They get him in the 7th. And Caden Ellis, that's about where he should go, the linebacker from Idaho. But he has some upside because he's a high motor guy. He can play inside, can play outside, can get after the quarterback. Needs to work on his balance a little more. But other than that, he's got a lot of upside. So no reaches. There's some steals in there. With having 5 picks, they help their team. It's another A-plus draft. We got 2 in a row here. So 2 teams maybe 3 teams did very well in this division. Very impressive. We're still waiting on that team in the whole NFL that had no worst pick. Did not reach once. So we had the Titans, the Panthers, and the Saints. We're waiting on one more team. Will it come in this video? It will not. The Buccaneers, best pick to me was Devin White. Not a crazy best pick. They got a really good player, don't get me wrong. He was 4th on my board. They got him at 5. We expected him to go there. It's not crazy value, I should say. So they get Devin White as the best pick. As the worst pick, it was Scott Miller for me. I did not have a grade on him. They take him to 6th. There were some good receivers on the board at the time. And then for their sleeper pick, it's Mike Edwards, the safety out of Kentucky. Now, it's a sleeper pick at 3rd round. I guess that's a little early for a sleeper pick. But why? It's because I think this guy can get on the field right away. They need help at safety. Mike Edwards can get on the field right away and help him out at safety, in my opinion. I think he's a good, strong safety. Actually seen glimpses of him playing in the box, running well downfield in man press with receivers and tight ends. So that stood out to me. So he can do some different things. And then we talked about Devin White. In the 2nd round, this was up for my best pick too. Because it was one of my sleepers of the draft, and Sean Bunting. I like Bunting a lot. Really, the only weakness, which really isn't a personal weakness, is he played weaker competition. That's not really his fault. And that's really the only thing. Super athletic, good in press, good in zone, can run with. We talked about how he's athletic, he can run with receivers, he can jump, attack the ball at the highest point. The reason why it wasn't the best pick is because even though I really like Sean Bunting and I'm okay with the pick, 2nd round, 7th pick, I think it was a little earlier than I expected. That's not a bad thing. It's just that's why it wasn't the best pick for them in terms of value. Jamel Dean in the 3rd, so that's back-to-back corners, which they did last year, which was interesting. I knew new coaching staff. I actually thought they were okay for the future at corner. I understand grabbing a guy like Sean Bunting, getting a guy like Dean, a guy with tons of upside, but then had multiple knee injuries. I thought round 3 was a little early, and it almost felt like a pick was like, we don't need anything else. Let's take a chance on a guy like this. That's how I took it. Not to say that's really how their process went, but it was interesting. Very good corner. Injury problem. Thought it was a little early. Mike Edwards, I had an early 4th-round grade. They took him very late 3rd. No problem with that. I think he can make an impact for them early. Talked about that. Anthony Nelson. I'm not a huge Anthony Nelson fan compared to everyone else. I think he can be solid. I don't really know where he fits on their defense. They're supposed to be running a 3-4. I thought he was traditionally just a traditional 4-3 end. It's an interesting pick, not really a big reach. Matt Gay in the 5th. I'm not a fan of drafting kickers. Maybe taking the best kicker in the 7th is good. They did get the best kicker, maybe in the 7th, even though I understand he probably would not have been there, but history shows taking kickers like this early hasn't really worked out for teams. So I'm not a huge fan of it. They did get the best kicker. Wasn't a fan of a Scott Miller pick. I thought undrafted. They take him to 6th. Terry Beckner's a solid pick in the 7th. It'll be part of that the defense tackle rotation there. So we'll see what they do with their defense. I was confused on why they took so many corners. I thought safety was a bigger need because they drafted well a corner. I do like Sean Bunting. Some kind of back and forth. I really like some picks. They did get a lot better with some of these picks. I gave him a B, kind of in the middle there, because Devin White's a heck of a football player. I talked about Sean Bunting. I like Mike Edwards. Terry Beckner was a good pick in the 7th round, and it's kind of just back and forth. There's picks that make it look like A-, and then there's picks that make the whole draft look like C. So I kind of split the difference there and gave the Buccaneers a B. So that's going to do it for this one. 2 teams did very good. The B for the Bucs is still a very solid grade, solid draft, but 2 teams did very well in this NFC South. We only got 2 more divisions to do, so if you haven't seen everything besides the West, both Wests in both conferences are coming. So if you haven't seen any other ones, those are on the channel. We got some NFL predictions coming starting next week, too. We're going to predict the upcoming season with placings, records, playoffs, Super Bowl, player rankings for the upcoming season, maybe some breakout players to look out for each team. So a lot more to come. We're going to cover the NBA draft, too, like we always do. So a lot to come here at the Goat House. Thanks, everyone, for the support. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.